Sunday Night Football. The Denver Broncos win again. 21-20 over the Vikings. Broncos move to 5-5. Vikings fall to 6-5, have their winning streak snapped. It was a weird game, man. Back and forth early on. Looked like Minnesota had it in hand toward the end, but Denver makes the fourth quarter comeback. Russell Wilson with the game-winning drive, game-winning touchdown to Cortland Sutton in the back of the end zone. Beautiful play from both sides. And then Denver shut down Minnesota on their comeback attempt.
Yeah, well, let's start sort of almost in reverse.
Do it.
You're right. It felt like at the end, Denver had figured out the balance of Minnesota's sort of blitz, no blitz thing, where, trying to figure out when are they going to come, when are they going to drop everybody out. Denver seemed to get a handle on that right at the end, and that enabled them to have that final touchdown drive. Cortland Sutton made a couple of spectacular catches on it. The one where he's getting interfered with by Ivan Pace, I think, ends up catching the ball one-handed anyway, despite the interference. And then the touchdown, which is, I'm kind of torn on what to make of that play. Like, it's probably both at the same time, but it was incredibly strong hands by Cortland Sutton to get up there, elevate, catch the ball, and then maintain complete control on it through the contact. And it was also probably quite weak by Mekhi Blackman, the rookie, who had like a run at it and a full sort of swipe. Like, he had eyes on the ball, knew where it was going, took that sort of run and jump at it, got elevated to the same spot, and then went in there with an arm to try and knock it loose, and just didn't even move anything, right? Just went in full arm contact, like clubbed Cortland Sutton's arm, and it didn't even adjust the ball in it. Like, if a DB has that kind of bead on the ball, you would expect at the very minimum to force some kind of like readjustment of the catch, and he didn't even affect it really. So I'm kind of torn on like how much credit to give Sutton and how much criticism to give Mekhi Blackman. But that was the game. That was the winning play. And it's the second time in a couple of weeks that Cortland Sutton has made, a spectacular touchdown catch in addition to the one he did earlier in the drive.
Yeah, this is where you're starting to see some of that old school Russ magic and everything. And Sutton, you described it well. Incredible hands at the catch point. It was really Josh Metellus was one-on-one with Cortland Sutton. By the way, we've highlighted Metellus a ton on the show because he's playing this safety hybrid, safety linebacker hybrid role. But it was nice design by the Broncos too. They put Sutton in the slot, got that matchup. Blackman had to come off his coverage and, like you said, wasn't able to jar it free from Sutton. Even just that final drive from Russell Wilson, maybe it was Kevin O'Connell saying Russell Wilson's doing a much better job of taking the checkdowns this year, and he just kept finding Samaje Perine underneath. The one thing about Sean Payton's offense is the checkdown game. Drew Brees was absolutely incredible at checking down, and I know that's in Twitter circles, or when you in fandom, people make fun of the check down because there's a check down quarterback. This guy's a dink and dunk guy. But there's an art to, as we've talked about a few times on this, knowing when that's the right option. It's there for a reason. And not every offense has check downs, right? Some offenses just have different sides and progressions, but some offenses don't necessarily like put the running back in a position where after your sight goes down the field, you come back to just get it to the running back. Not every offense does that as often as Sean Payton. They do it a lot. So when we used to do our charting and everything, Drew Brees would check down a ton. When the Lions brought their offense to Detroit for Matthew Stafford, they were trying to get him to check down just at the right time when they needed to. When Brady went to the Bucs, the Patriots didn't really check down a whole lot. They just had the running back as part of the progression. But the Bruce Arians offense, they always had a running back in position for the check down, right? Get it to him and pick up some yards. Say all that to say, it feels like Russell Wilson's doing that very simple part of his game a lot better this year. Just getting the ball. All right, let's just get some yards. It's still not perfect. He'll take his sacks and negative plays. But he did that. He played this very patient game on the fourth quarter drive. And then this one was like, I'm going to drop my eyes, do everything that's wrong about quarterbacking, drop my eyes, move up towards the rush, chuck it up. But he chucked it up into a perfect spot for Cortland Sutton to go make the game winner.
Yeah, it was a strange game because like right at the start, the Vikings were another one of those teams that we talked about that were trying to throw the game away. I mean, Dobbs fumbled twice in the first 3 snaps, I think. The second one, with the balls ripped out of his hands by Baron Browning before Kareem Jackson comes in to hit him in the face or in the shoulder with his face. And then he had like 3 turnover-worthy plays in like the first half, but they were 10-9 up, right? So it's like the Vikings have kind of they've ridden their luck, and they've got out to the other side of, well, if they just stop making those plays, they win this game fairly comfortably. And that's kind of looked like was going to happen. They then stopped really screwing up. They took a lead. Madison then fumbles the ball away. They start screwing it up again. And then it felt like Denver was going to – then Denver goes in their game-winning drive, takes the lead. And you're like, this is sort of snatched away from Minnesota. And then the opposite happened with Russell Wilson started to get a handle on what this Minnesota defense was doing and not getting buried every single play. And then the exact opposite happened with the Denver defense, which got hyper-aggressive, and Dobbs was just getting murdered every single drop back and never even got close to executing a game-winning field goal drive.
Both teams, I mean, there was a lot of back and forth here. Minnesota started running the ball extremely well, leaning into that. They had the big fake punt, which looked like, all right, that's the thing that's going to put them over the top. But Denver's defense just kept cracking down, man.
That was huge. Like that, it looked like that fake punt was going to be a huge turning point in the game. Dobbs had this like hit as he was thrown, interception. Josie Jewell got to him and on the blitz. Ball pops up. That turns into a field goal for Denver. So the Vikings defense stands on that drive, holds really well. It's only a field goal despite being set up like in the red zone. The Vikings then go 3 and out on the next drive. And you're like, momentum swinging back to Denver. But then they go for it on 4th and 4 with that fake punt, which it was difficult to tell. They were essentially, Chris was sort of suggesting on the broadcast that that's just one of those auto calls. Like they just had the look. Denver was giving them the edge.
I think a lot of those are.
Probably.
I think a lot of the fake punts, it's like, you got stones, Kevin O'Connell, when it's like, I just read it.
Yeah, or it's a read and then somewhere on the sideline there's like a kill call,
you need to have like an okay.
It's like, hey, no. Like I know we're getting the look, but no, not now.
Yeah.
So they either just don't give them the kill call, which is effectively authorizing to go for it anyway. But either way, that 4th and 4 keeps that drive alive, and then they convert on 3rd and 20 like a couple plays later. So they really like dug themselves out of what was momentum swinging away from them. The other really sort of key play that could have tilted the balance in the other direction on that final Denver game-winning drive, I think. They had one of those passes to P. Ryan. Ivan Pace comes in, hits him, and forces the fumble.
Yeah.
And the fumble just skits out of bounds before Pace can get onto it and turn the ball over. Like, that was really close to being a huge defensive stand play by Ivan Pace and the Vikings defense to get the ball back and win the game, essentially. And just because he hit it close enough to the sideline and the ball comes out in the wrong way, instead skits out of bounds, nobody even remembers it the next day. It's just it's just a thing that happened on the drive.
It was, the fumble, it just gets out of bounds in time. I mean, even just like the Josie Jewell hit that you said that turned into an interception, the ball's going to get, right to the right spot for the pick and everything. So, it was a lot of weird turnover-type plays and game-changing plays in this one. Early on, Josh Dobbs fumbles on one of a unique play. That was Hawkinson taking the snap, right? Took the snap and pitched it to Dobbs in short yardage. So Dobbs, the quarterback, is taking a toss sweep, basically. And, of course, Kareem Jackson comes in and throws helmet first in there as well after the fumble was forced. But just a lot of crazy back-and-forth plays. Defense is cracking down at the right time. And Denver, the one good prediction I've made all year, Denver's defense is going to be better.
Yeah.
With no evidence other than they can't be this bad.
Their pass rush was really good.
Yeah.
I mean, they were getting after that Vikings offensive line, which we just complimented during the week. Like, it's been dramatically better this season. And Denver's pass rush was destroying it collectively. I mean, everybody was getting pressure. It was coming from all over the place. Baron Browning had a bunch of good plays. In particular, I thought some of Browning's most impressive plays were once Dobbs started scrambling and getting out of there. Like, he chased him down really well.
Yeah.
Browning showed some real athleticism to corral Dobbs in a way a lot of other guys haven't been able to do.
we'll wrap it up in a second here. Back during draft time when I was trying to justify the Tyree Wilson pick for the Raiders, we spent a bunch of time saying, well, he might be good. He might not be good at actually winning, but he might be good at just being athletic for when the quarterback scrambles, like when they play Mahomes and the Chiefs. There is this element of you're playing enough quarterbacks that like to break the pocket now, that the skill set of just being athletic on the edge and setting the edge, which is part of the role, not just winning one-on-ones, but being there, being able to contain the quarterback, tracking him down when needed, it is valuable in some games more than others, right? If you're playing Brock Purdy and the Niners, you probably want some quick wins, get in his face. But when you're playing Dobbs or you're playing Mahomes, it's not always the case. And yeah, you're right. Like Denver did a pretty good job of that, using their athleticism on the edge and tracking Dobbs down when needed.
Mm-hmm. The Kareem Jackson hit. So Kareem Jackson has now been fined an absolute fortune this season, ejected from multiple games or one, and suspended.
I mean, he's probably had, of the 5 worst hits in the NFL this year, he's probably had 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah.
We'll say that.
But of all the sort of stages of like, hey, how do we affect the game? Like the NFL is on this push. Now you can question or analyze what is their motivation. Is it actually player safety or is it avoiding billion-dollar lawsuits? Whatever it is, the NFL is on a push to remove certain dangerous hits from the game of football, one of which is lowering the crown of your helmet and spearing yourself into a guy, of which Kareem Jackson seems to be on a one-man mission to maintain that hit in the game. But they've fined him an absolute fortune this year, ejected him from games, and suspended him from games. And this game, he was supposed to be suspended. He was supposed to be suspended for this game, but won it on appeal and got the suspension reduced, so he was playing. And then I think the third snap of the game, he comes in on that play where Dobbs is losing the ball to Baron Brown and getting it ripped out, and comes in and just does the absolute like textbook teaching tape definition of lowering the crown of your helmet and launching yourself at a guy, right? Now, he only hits him in the shoulder, as opposed to in Dobbs' helmet, which would have made it even worse. But, like, that's the hit. This whole heads-up teaching campaign of teaching kids not to do that, that's what they're trying to avoid, right?
Heads down and launch.
Right. Like, you could use that play and show it to 8-year-olds and be like, this is what not to do. This is what we're trying to avoid, right?
It's like Harry just got done from being grounded and banned from football, and he just goes and does the same thing again.
Right. And I tweeted the play last night, and the number of people, so there were a few little cohorts of people in the replies. There were the people that were like, oh, that's just football. Clean hit. You're like, well, it's not, right? Like, it's literally against the rules. If you just read the rule, you cannot lower the crown of your helmet and launch yourself forcibly into a player, into an opponent, I think is the term. Doesn't say ball carrier, doesn't say runner, opponent. You cannot do what he did, right? So it is literally against the rules. You're wrong. That's just outright incorrect thing to say. Then you've got the people that are like lamenting that the game's gone soft, right? I preferred the time where paralysis was a real outcome for hits. That's when you know they want it bad, right? Is when players can lose their ability to walk. That's what I'm interested in for the game of football. This is gladiatorial. It's Roman Colosseum stuff. I want bloodshed, right? And you're like, okay, that's an opinion. The rest of us seem to be wanting to take this in a different direction, right? And I'm kind of wondering, like, if the NFL genuinely does care about things like this, then Kareem Jackson has demonstrated a fairly impressive ability to not learn from his behavior. What is the next step? Because if this was performance-enhancing drugs, his next step would be a year's suspension,
right,
or an indefinite suspension until, like, you demonstrate some capacity to learn from your mistakes. So
all that said, it was not called a penalty.
It wasn't even a flag.
No flag.
I think that doesn't change any of what we're saying, right? All that means is that the officials are still bad, and he's going to be getting a letter from the NFL. Like, I would bet a large sum of money that he gets at the minimum fine for that, right? Like, they will acknowledge that was a missed call on the field. So I don't even think it's worth getting bogged down in that, except to say officials in the NFL stink. But if you're trying to eliminate that hit, what is your next step for Kareem Jackson? Because fines haven't worked, ejections from the game haven't worked, and a single whatever it was, 1 or 2 game suspension hasn't worked. What's the next step?
Longer suspension.
How long?
6 games, 8 games.
I think at the minimum,
You do a season.
he should be shut down for the rest of the season.
He's had more. My whole thing is he's had more egregious ones this year for whatever that's
Right,
worth.
but they compound. Like all these, you can't just take any one of them in isolation anymore. This is a pattern of behavior of a specific type of hit the league has made a point of trying to take out of the game. You don't just say, you can't excuse this by saying it's a violent game, things happen at a split second, you can't control where you're hitting, the guy moved at the last second because somebody's pulling his arm. We've dealt with this. Other sports have dealt with this. Football has dealt with this. You go and watch any film of Joe Montana and look at the hits that happen 3 seconds after the play where a defensive end runs in and buries him. That never happens anymore. The league has already taken certain hits out of the game, and nobody has said, well, they can't possibly expect them to ease up at the end of the play.
I was going to add something, but I'm good.
We've already changed the game. We're trying to change this hit. The next step has got to be serious punishment for consistent breach of behavior.
We were going to finish early, but you just went on it.
I'm still early. I got 2 more minutes of ranting to get us out on time.
So Denver moves to 5-5 with the win. Vikings fall to 6-5.